What is dilemma?
Dilemma is something that I can't believe I didn't know the value of dilemma when I was an executive. I cannot believe in all the scripts I analyzed over 12 and a half years that I didn't have it termed. I think I loosely understood dilemma in terms of story and conflict. However, it wasn't till after I left the studio and dived into story in every way imaginable that the word dilemma came into my realm. I understood dilemma through structuralist Jeff Kitchen. Yes, that I first took one of my very first structure courses from when I became an executive. And when I left the studio, I re-looked at what I learned from Jeffrey Kitchen, and dilemma somehow just came to me in this way that changed how I see story. And that became everything for developing my brand and looking at the value of dilemma. I feel like so many story people skip over or don't define dilemma. And dilemma is everything to setting up a story when we feel how the character is caught between a rock and a hard place. And for me, I think the aha moment that went beyond what I learned from Jeff was the recognition that the choice the character makes in the dilemma is what defines the external pursuit. So that was my big aha moment that helped me. I think there's so much that we learn from everybody who's studying story. I've been analyzing story for 30 years now. And when I look at my counterparts who think in alignment, like Jeffrey Kitchen, like Michael Haig, like John York, when you have people where Dara Marks that are seeing story in a similar way, and you kind of look at like what is their terminology versus my terminology, and what is aligning and what is missing, and how do you redefine something so that the writer can grasp it more.
Is dilemma the same as problem?
Dilemma, I feel like, is something that everyone in life understands because we all face dilemmas continuously. So I think the difference between a dilemma and a problem is more of like an obstacle, versus a dilemma is creating a pursuit. So a problem or obstacle is more something that happens to a character on the way to a goal, versus a dilemma is a trigger event. That was another thing that I added to dilemma, was the recognition that a trigger event happens to the character before they face the dilemma. So that was something that was missing in what I understood of it before as well. And that was something that I was like, oh, that's what was missing. So when there's a trigger event that leads a character to a dilemma, then the choice that they make in that dilemma defines a pursuit. So that's what differentiates a dilemma from a problem.
And some of that is set up before the story starts because it's a childhood wound?
Yes, yes. I have come to find in the way I teach and see story that the stories that are hitting at the highest level are stories where it's almost like a math equation. It's almost like you're looking at the trigger event that happens in childhood. Then you're often looking at a trigger event that happens before we enter the story. And then the inciting incident or series trigger and dilemma in TV will split open those two wounds. And then you're developing the character from those three places as a way to add depth to the character.
How does a character's backstory influence their goals and their dilemmas?
When you look at in life and we think about, like, I think a TV show that I feel like perfected the idea, I think when Lost first started and it looked at memories in our life, it looked at, because the way that Lost developed characters at first was the idea of going back to a specific moment in a person's life and kind of arcing that out. And then when I think about the way it evolved was a recognition that the flashback sequence was recognizing that it isn't just one moment in the arc of that moment that influences our choices in the present. It is a series of moments from different life traumas or joys or failures that inform choice. So by going to different life places, then we feel what is influencing why the character is choosing the way they are.
How do past wounds hold a character back?
I like to think that when you look at the past wound, you're looking at, starting with the childhood wound, you're looking at something called a negative narrative that we can all identify with, the voices we hear in our head that tell us, I'm not enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy of this. That starts with the childhood wound and then progresses from that negative narrative in the mind that goes into a flaw. And when you go into the flaw is what's holding a character back. And again, we all identify with flawed behavior. We all have flaws and we all become conscious of our flaws. Does not mean we heal our flaws. We become conscious, and story is the opportunity for the character to become conscious of that flaw and decide if they want to acknowledge the flaw or if they want to resist working or processing through that flaw in order to get to the goal.
Have you seen it where writers make their characters too perfect or too flawed?
Both. Yes, both. I feel the characters that are too perfect are characters that we can't identify with. Characters, it used to be that when you read scripts and you would read a character description, you would read, oh, she's beautiful or he's handsome. And it started sounding like rubber, like you can't tell anything about a character from that description. And I think writers have gotten to a place where they recognize the value of describing a personality trait is going to bring you much deeper into that character and understanding that character.
How many dilemmas should a main character face?
In the story, there are two pivotal places for the dilemma. The two pivotal places are in the inciting incident setup or in the climax. The value of having a dilemma in both places is a tremendous value because it shows you, is the character going to transform or not? When you look at the structure that I've seen shows and films do, where you have the character often facing a similar dilemma in the climax, that they faced in the inciting incident, then the question becomes, did they learn through going through action, obstacles, and stakes? Did they learn what the flaw was that was holding them back? And through that recognition, are they able to move forward? So if the writer puts a dilemma in the opening and the climax, as well as setting up, if you're doing streaming, setting up what's coming next as a cliffhanger, then those are three places that there is tremendous value in using a dilemma. But the opening and the climax are great places for the dilemma.
How much does the viewer really want the character to change? I mean, in real life, most people don't really change that much.
Yeah.
You know, they might work on themselves, but we're still kind of all who we were at 7 years old. So
yes.
How much do we really want to see our favorite characters evolve?
It is a great question. In film, the transformation is everything because we want to know that the character evolved from how they thought in the beginning to how they think in the end. And there's something that with the format of the beginning, middle, end that fulfills us if we can feel that transformation versus in, say, like when you look at The Sopranos and people would say, well, Tony Soprano is never going to change. So I think that's where it comes to advanced writing, when you recognize, all right, there are certain parts of a person that won't change. However, within the conflict involved in each story, you do want to feel like the character is taking a step of awareness that is causing even a slight change. It's not going to change the character trait of the dominant flaw. However, the awareness has a universal effect for the audience to become aware of what is holding them back. And when you see a character who can move through that block, then it helps the audience to think, if they can do it, I can do it.
Well, I haven't watched the second season of White Lotus, but
yes.
I don't know if I really want to see Jennifer Coolidge's character change too much. I like the way she is.
Yes.
Because I enjoy watching. She's kind of a lovable hot mess.
Yes.
And I don't know if I want her to become perfect, you know?
In season 2, she's a lovable hot mess.
Oh, good.
Oh,
okay,
yes.
okay.
Oh, yes. That's very well put in that description. She is a lovable hot mess in season 2. I feel like Mike White is very authentic to the recognition of what the strengths of that character is, and plays into that. Season 2 is brilliant.
Oh, great. I'm looking forward to watching it.
If you liked season 1, you are going to love season 2.